Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another episode. Today we have Bart Skala with us, who's actually a University of Rochester alum who graduated last year, and he not only studied abroad both in Copenhagen and Stockholm on the DIS program, he was actually an ambassador for the CEA. And he's currently living and working abroad in Geneva, Switzerland. And he's going to talk to us a little bit about the process of how this happened, what steps he took, how his undergrad study abroad and his choices for undergrad study abroad affected his career choice abroad. So if you're interested, keep on listening. All right, why don't you introduce yourself, Bart?
Hi, everyone. My name is Bartholomew Scala, and I'm a recent graduate at the University of Rochester, class of 2023. I was a student in international relations with a minor in economics and philosophy. And currently I'm working out in Geneva, Switzerland, for an international organization called the International Air Transport Association. So we're a trade organization that represents the interests of the airline industry, and we do everything we can to support their challenges and their journeys into becoming successful businesses.
So you are a University of Rochester graduate. When and where did you study abroad when you were a student?
Yeah, so I actually went abroad twice. I did a full year during my junior year, my third year. I spent my fall 2021 in Stockholm, Sweden, and spring 2022 in Copenhagen, Denmark. So yeah, Scandinavia.
And did that affect your post-grad decision, or did you know from before that you were going to study abroad? How did you kind of make it so that you could work abroad?
Yeah, it was a combination of a few things. I definitely knew that I was going to go abroad beforehand. I have a lot of family here. I'm first generation in North America, so being able to kind of revisit a lot of my aunts, my uncles, my cousins. I love the idea of being really close to them and getting to know the sides of my family that perhaps were a little bit tougher for me to reach growing up. Uh, but perhaps one of the biggest reasons for why I went abroad actually was I met a girl out here in the second week of my study abroad when I was in Stockholm. And I love kind of was one of the reasons to keep me out here. But yeah, it was definitely a combination of a lot of different things.
How did your study abroad experience kind of aid that? Did it give you insight on what it would like to be abroad, living abroad? What are some cultural experiences you had that, really changed your mindset, if that even happened?
100%. There's okay, so living abroad, I mean, obviously there is always going to be this this feeling of not feeling like you're really at home. It pushes you to be a little bit outside of your comfort zone. And for some that might not work, that's just the way life is. I really enjoy that because it embraces me. It first of all embracing other cultures, but it also pushes me to understand what are the differences of the cultures that I grew up in and the way I was raised as opposed to others, and kind of the way different people live are also the way different places around the world, the way they run and how we're organized. And I think that there is such a fascinating, unique aspect behind every single different culture and every single different country. And so being able to really hone in on those differences and try to experience them yourself, that's something I will always embrace about the aspect of living abroad. What's not to say is obviously growing up in Canada, for example, it's a homey feel, even when you're in a big city. Um, People are very nice. You say sorry a lot. I guess some of those stereotypes might actually present themselves to be true. In some places around the world, especially in Europe, that might not be as much the case. People might be a little bit more introverted to themselves, perhaps a little bit closed off to having new people in their social circles. And that's something that, that it takes a lot of time to adjust to and to maybe transform your experiences around. If you come in with the thought that you're going to make 500 new friends in your first week, I would probably go ahead and reevaluate your plans to maybe move to Europe, for example. because obviously different cultures have different conceptions around uh, social, I guess, interaction, especially with new people. Um, but what I will say is like one of the things I love the most about it is that the people here are very intellectually provocative. They really push you to think. For example, I a lot of the local people that I've made friends here, even the smallest, most enjoyable things in life, like maybe going to the bar for a beer, and the conversations can be um, very intellectual, and that's something that I really appreciate about my life here. Something that I think is very unique to where I'm living in Europe specifically, and yeah, that's one of the reasons why I also decided to move out here.
Can you remember a specific experience either in Copenhagen or Stockholm where you experienced something different about their culture and you were kind of like, yeah, I'm going to move to Europe, or this is kind of like pushing you to be outside of America?
Yeah. Um, I would say it's a very it's something unique to Scandinavia that perhaps I wasn't really so much attracted to. There were I think there is it's a very introverted society, and being a very extroverted person myself, I found it really hard to maybe find myself accustomed to their ways of living. I wouldn't say it was so much directly from the cultural experiences that maybe I got from Denmark and Sweden, but more so the educational experiences that I got directly. One thing I think that is maybe especially more prevalent in Europe, that I've experienced throughout my study abroad was there's a lot of open dialogue that exists between professors, between students. Certainly, a unique aspect of it is, for example, you can meet up with your professors after class as a class, and maybe over a more like casual environment, rather just being in a classroom, you can talk a lot about class issues. And so the way your education is versed is like almost more so like a career, as opposed to the United States, where it's like kind of like a background hobby that you're doing with all of your other extracurriculars. And I mean, both sides of the token definitely have their own positive aspects to it. But what I liked specifically about the educational aspect in Europe is that it does encourage always, uh, yes, this open discussion, and always being able to speak about your opinions. And but that also translates into the professional work life as well. It's really, really important, for example, to talk about a lot of things. And even though, for example, I'm just an intern right now at my organization, they value my opinions just as much as somebody who might be a higher up in the company. And so you see a lot more of that, I guess, equality of discussion, equality of value of discussion that comes. And there's not so much maybe like a social hierarchical chain that exists. And being in the early stages of my career, that's naturally something that I really have come to enjoy. Being in Europe, that's something I noticed during my time in Stockholm and in Copenhagen, specifically in Scandinavia. A really unique thing that they have is that the professors, for example, are called by their first name when you're speaking to students. So, for example, I would say, Steve, can you please help me with my assignment? Steve being my professor, not Professor XYZ. And so that the lack of hierarchy definitely stems into the professional workplace as well, and it makes for a very unique work environment that I definitely cherish and enjoy.
So that sounds super interesting. And can you talk more about, I mean, you spoke about like the cultural aspects or that barrier that isn't there so much when you're a student and the career kind of getting more experience in that. What were the actual logistics into, kind of getting this internship or getting your job outside of the country? Because I think a lot of students are kind of scared to even think about that because they're like, that's just way too complicated.
Yeah, definitely. If you don't mind, I'll actually I can break down this question into a few parts. I can possibly give a little bit of an overview of how I found my job specifically, and perhaps provide a little bit of advice to students on how they could find themselves in a similar opportunity.
That sounds great.
Yeah, so how it was specifically with my job, I mean, especially having an international relations degree and looking to work in international organizations, I cannot stress enough how valuable it is to try and build up your network as much as possible. Speak to people, reach out to people on LinkedIn. If you find an organization or a nonprofit that you're interested in their message, in their values, in what they're looking to achieve, uh, reach out to people that are in those organizations and really try and find a way that you can be included in something like that. The best place to start, and this is where I found my job specifically, is through alumni networks. So look at I guess, the organizations that you were a part of, the schools that you were a part of, and see what kind of value can I get from that alumni network specifically. So the way I found my internship specifically in Geneva was actually through the Catholic Newman community at the University of Rochester. So my boss is also a fellow U of R alum from 2006, and she used to be involved with the Catholic Newman Center just as I was. We had the same e-board position at the Catholic Newman Center, and so when I found her contact information through Father Cool, our priest on campus, I was delighted because not only was I looking for something in international organizations, but also something to do with an aviation or a maritime niche. And so I literally just bothered her for an entire year. I think I sent 6 or 7 follow-up emails and LinkedIn messages until she finally got back to me. Uh, you got to be that person. Just reach out to as many people as you can, follow up with them. Don't be afraid. I mean, our 20s and being a fresh graduate from university, that's our time to make mistakes. That's our time to put ourselves out there and to really try and see what we can get from. And we have such a valuable network, especially at the University of Rochester and especially through the Center for Education Abroad, that is so willing to help out their students in very successful and very high places. I mean, if you look at the diversity of people that we have in our alumni network, if you go on LinkedIn, for example, and you click on the alumni tab at the University of Rochester, you'll see people all over the United States, all over Canada, Europe, Africa, Asia, not to mention everywhere else. So if you're looking for an international career, the best place to start is in the places where you have some sort of a connection to the people that you might want to be working with, and they'll be a lot more inclined to help you. Another aspect is kind of similar to that. Don't just, for example, throw your application into a pool of all these other applicants for an internship or for an entry level position and kind of cross your fingers that you're going to get an interview, because chances are they already have somebody lined up that they've been speaking to, that they've been trying to get in, that they're in touch with, that is very motivated to get a job like that. So before you apply, make sure you try to find a contact that might be directly relevant to the role and ask them, even for a coffee chat over Zoom on maybe more details they can provide about the position, about who they're looking for, and to get a better understanding for themselves if you would be a good fit, but also if you see yourself working in an organization or a company like that. Know your worth. I mean, we're coming from an excellent university that has a very vast network and best opportunities to use that. The final point that I will say is specifically around visas. Now, that's something that can be really, really complicated, especially for Americans. If you want to live in Europe, there are certain countries that might be a bit more flexible and lenient to, for example, foreigners who want to come and get a visa and work in their country. So I know, for example, Austria, they have a program where you can apply from anywhere around the world. They have an agreement with many different countries, and you can do 1 year. You get a resident visa, and it can be either to try and find a job in the country, or to learn the language, or to see if you can learn more about Austrian culture. And that's a great way to, for example, start and make your mark in Europe. But other places, like, for example, Switzerland or Denmark, for example, they're very, very strict with their immigration regulations. So be sure to check that before you're looking at like what places you think might suit you best. And if you have any sort of claim potentially to citizenship in Europe, I would say go for it. I don't know, your granddads, your aunts, your uncles, your moms, your dads, like look for people in your family, some kind of bloodline in your family that might have some kind of connection to an EU country, because you might just be eligible for a citizenship and you're not, and you might not know that. There are countless people I know, even here in Geneva, Switzerland, that are originally from the United States or from Canada, for example, and through their great grandparents got citizenship, got Italian citizenship. And so that's how they were able to really start the process of having a career in Europe. And so, yeah, if you can find some kind of ways to get a citizenship, a second citizenship, or a second passport in Europe, that can definitely be really helpful for your study abroad and for your professional career abroad.
So you spoke a lot about the logistics of, getting this job. When you're actually there, can you kind of take us through either a daily life of what it looks like or how it may be different from the US of how you work? Or, if you don't want to go that route, you can kind of talk about your favorite and least favorite moments of working abroad, kind of a balance of, the highs and the lows. It's up to you.
Yeah, okay. So I'll answer both of those questions quickly. My favorite experience of living and working abroad is the work-life balance. It's a lot more lenient here than it would be in a lot of careers in the United States. I I can count as many times on one hand that I've had to work late, and that's partly in due to the fact that people get treated really well here from a labor law perspective. I get 5 weeks of vacation every single year, and I am sure to use all of those. Um, I think something that I would dislike is I mean, very unique situation to myself, but this obviously is the beginning of my career. I don't have a lot of family in Switzerland per se, specifically. While I might have some more family in Eastern Europe, it still is a little bit hard to reach them since my life is here and my parents are back home. So there can definitely be a culture shock that is associated around uh, kind of being stuck, you might feel like, or might be feeling a little bit lonely. And that's something I can feel every once in a while. I mean, I live in a 28 square meter studio here, and yeah, sometimes there's a day or two that I might have to spend alone. But rest assured, I mean, all of the big cities in Europe, they have terrific expat communities. There's some apps I can definitely recommend. One is Meetup, for example. They have awesome different types of groups that you can join, depending on what your interests are. I don't know, art, cycling, running, tennis, and you can find all these different things that you're interested in and like-minded people through these groups. And they organize group rides, group museum sessions. There's one, for example, here in Geneva specifically, to go to a bar and learn French with a bunch of other expats. Another example that can be helpful is just looking on Facebook. A lot of people say Facebook is for old people. Rest assured, that is not the case, especially in Europe. A lot of awesome Facebook groups are here for expat communities where they organize different group events and meetups so that you can make friends that way. In terms of my like day-to-day living, it's a lot different through my commute specifically, and also some of the things that I do after work. So, I mean, I take public transit everywhere. Public transit in Switzerland, especially, is super, super well connected. Uh, Geneva is a really, really cool place because it's so small, but yet has such a large impact. And so you're living in a big city, but everything is really walkable. I mean, I think I have a really cool bragging right about the fact that I work at the airport and I can literally walk to the airport, aka my job, from my apartment, which is in downtown in the heart, like next to the main train station. And to walk from downtown to the airport is 45 minutes. And it's so cool. I mean, you're in one minute you're in such a big kind of hustle and bustle, and in the next minute it's really quiet. And that's something that's really cool. I enjoy. You can take the bus, you can take the tram, you can take the train. Um, After work, generally the culture is a lot more liberal around, for example, your not only your work-life balance, but like your, for example, your relationship with your colleagues. It's not uncommon, for example, to have a lot of after-work events where, for example, especially in the summertime, we meet along the lake at a bar, for example, and have a glass of wine, and you talk about things outside of your job and outside of the office. And that's something that's really unique and something that I really enjoy about living here. The fact that even though it might seem, especially when you're really young and really in the beginning of your career, that I might be feeling a little bit disconnected, it's in little moments like that that you realize it is a very well connected place.
So I know a lot of students who study abroad, either, for a semester, for a year, even for a summer, and they do that to get a taste of the region they want to work in later on or they want to live in. So, they'll study abroad in Copenhagen to be like, okay, maybe I want to work and live in Europe or this part of Europe.
Mhm.
What are some differences you can think of studying abroad versus working abroad? Some things that, you may have missed that weren't really in your experience of studying abroad, but are pretty prevalent in working abroad.
Don't look at it from a professional lens, because study abroad is a once in a lifetime experience that not only from maybe a social perspective and meeting lifelong friends potentially, but also from an educational perspective. And it should be from an educational angle. The reason why I chose Scandinavia specifically is because I had a really big attachment to the idea of Swedish living, and that's what inspired me for my first trip to Stockholm. And I wanted to learn more about this concept of Jantelagen, which means everybody is kind of the same and we're all like one kind of giant community. And I wanted to learn more about that. And that's what inspired me to stay in Sweden. But in terms of trying to pick a place for study abroad that might be a place that's suited for your professional career later in life, um, that might not be the best case. Couple reasons. Number one, usually when you're studying abroad, you don't look at, for example, the day-to-day expenses, the day-to-day costs of what it is living in a specific city. Now, a lot of people, for example, they go to places like London or Stockholm or Copenhagen, and either, your loans from the University of Rochester, your scholarship money, all of that goes over. And generally, when you're in a study abroad program, you're going to be living in student housing. You're going to be not necessarily looking for your own apartment or paying rent most of the time. And so you might not be as well versed around the specifics of, okay, well, what is the cost of living here? What are the different types of aspects? Like, is it hard to find an apartment here? The second thing about that is also from just a career reach perspective, like being there mainly specifically for education, but trying to find out if it's going to be a good fit for you professionally. It's really hard to, do networking on the side of like all of the different things that you have in your exchange program, because your exchange programs are really busy and you're traveling a lot. So you might not have as much time to network for coffees with, for example, professionals in that city, or to know what the salaries are like in a city like that for what you're looking at going into. Um, so yeah, there's a lot of aspects around the professional front that like it's kind of tough to know when you're going specifically for school, and also from just like a living standpoint, like how livable is this city? You might get a social feel for it in some aspects or not, but from a more livability perspective, there's things that go a lot deeper. And for example, taxes, health and healthcare, like those are all things that maybe might not be at the top of your radar when you're looking at a study abroad program, that might be more prevalent to you when you're looking for a place to live and to start your career.
And for just to end this on a lighter note, what's
Yeah.
what's the no, thank you for talking about that. That's very important. What's one of the funniest stories or that you have from working abroad? It can be recently, it can be, kind of some time before.
A funniest experience from
Funny
work.
or something that just, it's one of your highlights. If someone was like, oh, something that really makes you smile from your working abroad experience. What's the like
Yeah.
first thing that pops in your mind?
Okay, definitely. Yeah, I think one of the coolest things that I've done so far, maybe it's not really funny, but kind of a bit of a dream come true. My dad was a professional cyclist in Poland growing up, and he kind of got me into cycling as well when I was a kid and when I was growing up, and now subsequently triathlon. So, yeah, one of the coolest experiences I've ever had is since Geneva is really, really close to the border with France. I mean, we're pretty much an exclave of France. Like we're covered on three sides of Geneva by the French border. We are really close to everything that goes on around there. And one of the coolest experiences ever was being able to see the Tour de France. It actually started in the town that was right over the border from Geneva, and it went about 160 kilometers through the French Alps, just outside of the city. And so, I with a group of some people that I ride the bike with here, we woke up super early in the morning at like 6 a.m. before they closed the roads. And we climbed this one like super, super tough mountain that all of the riders on the Tour de France were doing. And we kind of like posted up camp before the riders started the race. And they literally zoomed right by us in like 20 seconds. And it's probably the most humiliating experience, like thinking you're in good shape and then just watching these like people your age crush that mountain and go twice the speed as you. But it was the coolest experience ever, and I made I've made a lot of friends through my bike club, and through that experience specifically, like that's for me that was a once in a lifetime experience, and I really hope that I can stay in Europe and continue pursuing my career here. And the utmost goal is to bring my dad here and get him to see the Tour de France one day as well. So fingers crossed on that. And yeah,
Thank you so much, Bart. We really loved having you on.
thank you so much. It was a pleasure, and always hope to chat soon.